up a little bit on what tech is doing for mediation and ODR later on in the conversation.
Sure.
So, but then after law firms, you completely took a very, very major side shift. Can you walk us through that, please?
We would talk about a lot of business ideas and say, we should do XYZ business and ABC business. And it was all like sometime, how you have these conversations and it's like, one day we should open our own restaurant, or one day we should have, this fitness venture. And after like doing that for about 4 or 5 times, we actually then saw startups with the exact same idea that we had discussed that actually got funded and were actually completely viable startups in the beta stages. Of course, they'd received like their series, rather their seed or angel funding, not the series A or anything like that. But I was suddenly like, oh my God, at some point, we can't just keep talking about this. If we want to do something, we need to do it because the time is right now. There is another legal tech consultant in the UK called Catherine Bamford. She runs BAM Legal. And she's a document automation expert. And she actually posted, I think, on LinkedIn 10 days ago, something like that. But everybody asked her, what does her day look like? And she's like, it is so varied. And if you look at the points in her day, it's like that post has like, speaking to law students, speaking to a law firm, and speaking to another consultant. And literally, I read that and I was like, oh my God, this is just like my day. Like, my day is, there is no typical day. Every day is different. Some days I'm speaking to a law firm. Some days I'm speaking to a corporate legal department. Some days I'm speaking to a vendor and they are getting feedback on how can they improve their product. Some days I'm speaking to another legal tech consultant. Some days I'm speaking to a law student who's trying to figure out, what is legal tech? Is this really a field that I can work with? So it's really, there is no typical day. Every day is different, and I'm speaking to a variety of people. And I think that's also what makes my job really exciting, and I enjoy the variety that it brings in. You first do sort of like a broad discovery call with the client to understand what are they really looking for. Because sometimes a client wants end-to-end entire digital transformation, and sometimes it's a little bit more niche. We have, they sometimes say, we have an IP team which is sort of struggling and we want to, make things more efficient for them. Or they'll come back and say, our litigation team wants to receive, updates from the court in a more systematic manner. So it's really about first doing that discovery and understanding where exactly is their pain point. And I think this is crucial because different people have different pain points. And while there are like tons of solutions, I keep saying this, there are tons of solutions out there and they may not all be for you. You need to figure out which solution is for you. During that discovery, asking the right questions and understanding what are the pain points that they are looking to resolve through process, a better process, which could be through just it could be a manual process, or it could even be a process through the adoption of technology. So once you do that discovery process, then you sort of identify together that, okay, we have identified X, Y issues, and it could be, for example, our corporate team really wants to spend less time that gets crossed off on billing. So they spend maybe 6 hours in drafting a contract, but they're able to build only 3, and we want to bring that time down. So what are the things we can do? So then I start interviewing people from the corporate team. I understand what are the kind of contracts they're working on, why is it taking so long, and what is it that is causing that non-billable time. So is it a formatting issue? Is it a proofreading issue? Or is it because they don't have standardized contracts and the contract creating the first draft itself takes so much time? Do they have a template in place? So these are the questions you kind of ask, and you can't also put all solutions in at one because it's going to really be overwhelming. You really need to think about adoption as well. So you kind of figure out which is their biggest pain point, and it'll be different for different organizations. For some, it's automation, like you just fix the automation problem and you get them their first draft, and then they've already saved that much time. For some others, it's proofreading because they don't want to spend that time proofreading. Maybe they already have their templates ready or their precedents, and it's easier for them to create the first draft. You don't know if there's real like a right path or something to prescribe, because this legal tech is sort of still uncharted territory in India and even abroad. So if you're and also there's different skill sets within legal tech, right? I mean, like I said, there are tons of legal tech companies which don't have a single lawyer. So it's not like I'm always speaking to law students. Of course, there are lots of times law students approach me and say, I don't want to practice law. I'm looking for a career outside law. Can you tell me a little bit more about legal tech? But there are a lot of other students who are not lawyers and still want to get into legal tech. And it's hard to sort of say that, or rather prescribe what is the next step to do, because it's not like a set journey. It's not like legal tech companies are coming to schools to recruit directly like the way law firms or corporate legal departments do. So it's not as structured a process as some of the other careers within law. But I would say the first thing would be start reading up more about your subject, whatever interests you. It could be a specific niche in legal tech, like a lot of engineers are interested in AI and law and the law. So start reading up more about it, understand what are the other solutions all over the world which are dealing with this problem, how have they addressed it, what are the different use cases for it, what is being done in India. There's a ton of problems in India around the legal justice system, in fact.
Hi Priyadarshini, welcome
Hi,
to
Shreya.
Prolawgue. Hi, thank you so much for agreeing to do this today.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so for everybody who's tuned in, Priyadarshini is a trained lawyer. She's worked with a couple of tier 1 law firms before she pivoted to venture into a health and workout startup. And then she has now pivoted completely into the world of legal tech, where she runs a legal tech consulting and also does a lot of legal tech related content. So welcome once again, Priyadarshini, and we'll sort of get right into it.
Sounds good.
All right. So you started as a lawyer and then you worked with a couple of tier 1 law firms. What was that like at that point of time?
It was a great experience. It was literally my dream job. I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid. And everyone kept saying, are you sure you know what you want? And then I interned when I was after my 10th standard summer vacations at a law firm, and I loved it. And then I was like, this is definitely what I want to do. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. I think I never realized at that point that working at a law firm, despite the work being fun, it means that you sometimes have to work 20 hours a day. And I think that was the bit that I didn't realize when I interned before. But I would definitely say it was a great learning experience. Apart from the law, there's a lot of determination, perseverance, research skills, and other skill sets that you develop by working in a corporate law firm, which I really enjoyed.
And what was the legal tech stack like at that point of time? Like, what did it look like working in an Indian law firm?
I mean, I would say a large part of it was non-existent. Like you had timesheet and billing systems, and almost, I would say 50% of the law firms had that. The ones that didn't use probably like a Word document or an Excel. But automation was to the extent of timesheet and billing. Like if you looking at automation tools or proofreading tools or even document management systems, they were all pretty non-existent. Everyone had like file shares, and they worked pretty much off the file shares, and it was difficult sometimes to connect between two offices across two different geographic locations, as well as it was sometimes difficult to work from home. So if you had an office laptop, then yes, that was easier. But if you didn't, then it was harder to go home and then connect. So there were definitely technical challenges. And this answer, of course, differs from firm to firm because each firm has their own policies. And that's completely changed in a span of over 10 years now.
And you also did your law from Columbia, right? So did you intern at a foreign law firm during your stint there?
Actually, no. I didn't do an internship, but I did a mediation workshop. So there we were exposed to, it was not really an internship, but we got to work with a couple of the mediation experts, and they came in and did a couple of training sessions for us. And then we went to the JAMS Institute, which is, I forget the acronym, but it's the International Association of Mediators, where they get together and they actually do corporate mediations. And so instead of doing a sort of an internship, I actually chose to do the mediation workshop. And I was very interested in mediation at that point. I actually still am, though I'm not doing anything about it. But it was a very, very nice experience.
So perhaps we can pick up a little bit on what tech is doing for mediation and ODR later on in the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but then after law firms, you completely took a very, very major site shift. Can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, it was around 2015. And my husband and I were both corporate lawyers working in firms, and we had just gotten married, and we literally had no time for each other. It was just sort of, even to coordinate a time to eat dinner together was like impossible. It was like sending an email, are you free, are you getting home, like what is the deal? And it was a lot of time, it was just over the weekend, because we also had different working styles. Like he would prefer staying back late in office, whether it was 2 a.m. finishing work, while I prefer to come home early, sleep early, and wake up at 4 a.m. if I had work. So because of the different working styles, our time at home was, we didn't have that much of overlap. But the few times that we did, we would talk about a lot of business ideas and say, we should do XYZ business and ABC business. And it was all like sometime, how you have these conversations and it's like, one day we should open our own restaurant, or one day we should have, this fitness venture. And after like doing that for about 4 or 5 times, we actually then saw startups with the exact same idea that we had discussed that actually got funded and were actually completely viable startups in the beta stages. Of course, they'd received like their series, their seed or angel funding, not the series A or anything like that. But I was suddenly like, oh my God, at some point, we can't just keep talking about this. If we want to do something, we need to do it, because the time is right now. Because if we don't do it, somebody else is going out there and do it. It can't just be someday anymore. So that's when we both sort of spoke about this, and I said, I'll take the decision and I will, be the entrepreneur, and he'll continue being a corporate lawyer. And we moved to Bangalore. Of course, Bangalore was a nicer ecosystem for a startup than Bombay. We were living in Bombay at that time, and we just took the plunge. So then that was it.
Taking that plunge is usually a very tough thing, right? What worked for you? Like, what gave you the motivation to actually take that leap of faith?
That's a very dangerous word you used. What worked for you? I'm very, very conscious of the fact that it's not all, when you use the word work, there's an implied sense that everything worked out and it was super successful. And I have to say it was not. So I would not use the terminology what worked for you. I would say it's just, I really wanted to do something on my own. I did have an entrepreneurial spirit. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So for me, it was important to figure out what I wanted to do and sort of channel that energy into, once I figured that out, to actually put it into place. So when I started out, it was super, super challenging, because you're used to getting instructions, filling a timesheet, knowing what you're doing every single minute of the day, and being answerable to either a client or your senior at work or somebody. And here it was like, you wake up and you can do whatever you want the day. And like half the time I felt so unproductive, because I was like, what have I done? I've not clocked like 20 billable hours. I've not charged anybody for anything. Like, I've just ideated. I've spoken to prospective customers on these 3 different business ideas. I've made notes on it. I've filled out surveys, but I have nothing to show for it. Like, I've done all this ideation work, but what does that mean? What does that really translate to? So I think for a long time, it was really challenging to figure out, is this working and is it not? And there is a large amount of self-doubt also that creeps in, because when you're used to being as busy as a corporate lawyer in India is, suddenly getting suddenly setting your own deadlines and your own targets and your own goals, and not sure if you've achieved them or not, because once you've done your bit of ideation, you're like, okay, is this enough to say that this is a business idea? Can I actually jump in and start implementing this? Should I start hiring people? Like, all of those decisions were huge question marks, which I didn't know the answers to, and I didn't know who to ask as well. So literally, like, I would go on meetup.com, find like breakfast for founders. They had like so many meetup sessions. I would go for all of them just because I needed to meet like other people who were also doing this and figure out how do I get started. I'm also not a techie, so it's not like I could just start coding and put together something. That was also a challenge for me. So I wouldn't say what worked. I would say there were a lot of things that didn't work. So it was like putting an idea together, trying it out. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. Okay, then let's look at another idea. Putting that together, trying it out. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work too. We need to try something else. So I think it was just the determination to keep trying, even when things didn't work out, which was quite a lot.
So just for our audience, could you walk us through what that idea was and what were you trying to build at that point of time?
So it was a fitness startup called FitMonk. It was essentially a platform through which you could book fitness classes at different centers in different geographic locations. So you could be in one part of a city and then do a swimming class one day, and then in another part of the city and do aerobics class the next day, and then in the third part of the city do a Pilates class. So the point was that if you got onto our platform and became a member of our platform, then you had access to fitness centers across the city. Of course, we did have centers in Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore, and we had access to different classes and even just the general gym access in these 3 different cities. So we didn't have we did like a small beta launch, and it's not like we had all of the centers in all of the cities signed up on us. We had a few select. And it was really to sort of help people work out anywhere, anytime, and not get bored of the workout. If you looked at the fitness statistics, most people sign up to a gym, pay the annual membership, and then don't really go after 2 to 3 months. In fact, I don't remember the exact statistics, but it's at least between 60 to 70%. So that's how the fitness centers actually make money. And as a person, you are very disgruntled because you're like, okay, I paid the fees. I went just for 2 months, and the rest of the 9 or 10 months were just, I didn't really go to the gym at all. So this was sort of to help you mix up your workout, as well as sometimes you are working in your location. You've signed up to a gym near your house, but sometimes you are traveling to Delhi, you are traveling to Mumbai, you are going to another part of the city for a different workout. I mean, rather, you are going to another part of the city for a meeting. And then by the time you reach home, it's too late to exercise. So you might as well, if you can get access to a gym near your meeting, you might as well do that. So the whole point was to solve a problem which I had when I was a corporate lawyer, which is varied timings and unpredictable timings. So you couldn't really commit to a specific time in a day at which you could go to the gym. So I just felt if we could provide that access, irrespective of geography and irrespective of the timing, then that would help and enable people to work out anytime, anywhere. So that was the whole concept behind FitMonk.
And from FitMonk, you sort of pivoted completely again to legal tech in that sense, and adaptive solutions. What was that like, and how did you get to know about adaptive solutions? Because I didn't know about them till much, much later.
So actually, adaptive solutions happened much later. It first started with FitMonk. After our beta launch, we realized quickly that it wasn't going to be a sustainable business in the long run, because our margins are so low. For FitMonk to actually make money and be sustainable, we really needed to get large volumes. So our app needed to be used as often as Uber or Book My Show or any other app of that frequency for it to really be successful and sustainable. And we weren't seeing that kind of growth happen in India. Just from our research and our interaction with the customers, it was our analysis that this was never going to reach that stage of volume. Though, a lot of people look at India as, a very high population country, and because of that you could have a large number of consumers. We realize even though we have more than 1.4 billion people, it's not like all of them are looking to work out. It's not like all of them want to exercise. We're not a very fitness conscious country to start with. So when we realized that this was not going to be something that would actually be sustainable, we didn't want to go down the route of just burning investors' money and raising money and sort of acquiring customers, when at the core we didn't feel that it was sustainable. So we started pivoting, and a lot of the investors that we had spoken to when we had started trying to see if we could raise money for FitMonk had said, okay, where is the connection? You're a lawyer and fitness, like what's the deal?
Yeah.
So, it was a little, and then I also realized that it would be much easier for me to start off or do something where I have a little bit more domain expertise. And then I was already passionate about technology. So I said, let's look at legal tech, because then that was the next. So fit tech obviously didn't work out. So I said, okay, where do I have domain expertise? And that was law. And then I said, let me look at legal and technology. So that's how sort of Elliot was born.
Okay, and can you maybe tell us more about what Elliot is and what Walchet is and everything that you're doing currently? And please walk us through all the stages, right? Because I assume initially when you must have started talking about legal tech, you would have gotten all kinds of reactions. So tell us what it was like at the inception also.
Sure. So when we started out, it was really just about I wanted to actually build technology solutions from scratch. And I really wanted to start with a proofreading solution because it was something that really bothered me when I was practicing law, just spending so much time proofreading a document. It would take so long, but it was required, it had to be done, and it was really frustrating. So I spoke to several different, tech companies in India. I spoke to several techies to figure out, is this something that we can build? And we were also trying to figure out how do we integrate it with Microsoft Word, because lawyers work in Microsoft Word. But for whatever reason, I was not able to figure out the right talent that could actually build that for me. And simultaneously, I also came across companies abroad that already had a solution like this and were doing really well abroad with foreign law firms. So then I was like, okay, I could either spend a lot of time building this, which I'm not even able to find the tech talent to help me do this, or I could actually reach out to these tech companies that already have this great solution and get a license to sell it in India and, market and sell and distribute in India. So then I wrote to a lot of them. In fact, there were, I think, at least about 3 of them at that point. So we wrote to all of them, and that's how it started. We just said, we're from India and we would really like to sell your technology in India. So if you're interested in working with us and allowing us to become a partner of you, then please let us know. We'd be very interested. And they just wrote back and they said, yeah, sure. So that's how it all started. It started by a couple of companies in the US trusting Elliot and the brand. And though we literally had no brand, it was nothing. It was just... we hadn't started, we hadn't done anything. So, but they said, no, we don't have anything in the Indian market. We're happy to get started and we're happy for you to be that front for us. So that was the process with Elliot. And then there were a couple of other companies as well that we reached out to, and slowly we've got several different technology vendors on board. So the model with Elliot was a little bit different, where we had licensed partnerships with different technology vendors in several different solutions. So and it covers like a broad range, because each of these vendors has about 10 or 5 solutions of their own. So on total, I would be offering about 30 different solutions, because I'm actually licensed with all of these vendors and I actually can provide these solutions in these markets. So presently my vendors are Litera, iManage, Thomson Reuters, and Avoca. So with them, I don't know the exact number, but it's approximately about 30 odd solutions that we cover, which is a broad range, which includes contract automation, proofreading, document formatting, document automation, document management systems, legal transaction management, metadata cleaning, software solutions, threat management solutions. So there's a whole gamut of solutions offered by these vendors. So with Elliot, what we want to do is really work with lawyers in law firms as well as corporate legal departments and understand their requirements and sort of make recommendations on best practices to improve their existing processes, as well as technology recommendations of solutions that could actually improve efficiency and productivity within the organization. And it's not just about, when I started out, of course, it was just about the solutions that I was licensed with. But today I don't do that anymore. It's much broader. It's I do make the disclosure that I am licensed to sell these particular solutions, but I genuinely work with the end client to understand their requirement and then make recommendations, even if it's not within my product portfolio. So there will be instances where I haven't had a product that they're looking for, but I will go out into the market and find that product and bring it back to them. So that's the kind of consulting I do with Elliot. With Walchet, Walchet is a lot more recent. It's a legal tech content platform that I launched earlier this year. Though a large part of the reason why I launched Walchet is because I realized there was a lot of clutter in the legal tech market. There are a ton of legal tech startups. There's a lot of solutions across the world, a lot of companies competing in the same space as well. And often as a consumer, you don't really know what to purchase, what kind of product. There's just so much noise out there. So a large part of what I wanted to do was advocacy, to just educate the consumer about the fact that there is technology out there for XYZ type of processes or problems, and you can use this. And within those technologies, let's declutter that for you and give you a little bit of a nuanced analysis between the use cases of each technology. Because it's not necessary that, I mean, in some cases for sure, there are some technologies which are better than the other. But in a lot of instances, I would say it's identifying the right use case. For instance, if you're looking for an e-discovery solution, maybe you just need a simple e-discovery solution and that's it. But sometimes you may require one with redaction or with a timeline built in. So it really comes down to identifying your need very clearly and then figuring out which solution has the features for that satisfy your need. I think that matching, there's a lot of gap and a skill set gap in doing that matching between the product and the end consumer. And you can't always rely on the legal tech vendor company, because obviously they're unlikely to recommend to you a competing product. But in some cases, that actually might be more useful because they may have a bonus feature which is perfect for the client's requirements. So I felt there was a lot of advocacy as well as nuanced analysis of different legal tech products that was required in the market. And that's where I wanted Walchet to step in. So Walchet is essentially blogs, interviews with legal tech professionals, blogs about legal tech content, interviews with legal tech professionals, and reviews of legal tech products.
And all of this sounds very, very exciting. I'm just wondering what a typical day in your life looks like right now.
Oh my God. You know, there is another legal tech consultant in the UK called Catherine Bamford. She runs BAM Legal.
BAM Legal, yeah.
And she's a document automation expert. And she actually posted, I think, on LinkedIn 10 days ago, something like that. Okay. That everybody asked her, what does her day look like? And she's like, it is so varied. And if you look at the points in her day, it's like, that post has like, you know, speaking to law students, speaking to a law firm, and speaking to another consultant. And literally I read that and I was like, oh my God, this is just like my day. Like my day is, there is no typical day. Every day is different. Some days I'm speaking to a law firm. Some days I'm speaking to a corporate legal department. Some days I'm speaking to a vendor and they're getting feedback on how can they improve their product. Some days I'm speaking to another legal tech consultant. Some days I'm speaking to a law student who's trying to figure out, you know, what is legal tech? Is this really a field that I can work with? So it's really, there is no typical day. Every day is different. And I'm speaking to a variety of people. And I think that's also what makes my job really exciting. And I enjoy the variety that it brings in.
I mean, okay. So maybe I should break this question a little bit. What do engagements with a corporate legal department or law firm look like? Like, where do you start? What is the process like? How do you identify the problem statement? How do you go about that entire process? If you can break this down for us.
Sure. So you first do sort of like a broad discovery call with the client to understand what are they really looking for. Because sometimes the client wants end-to-end entire digital transformation. And sometimes it's a little bit more niche. We have, they sometimes say, we have an IP team which is sort of struggling and we want to, make things more efficient for them. Or they'll come back and say, our litigation team wants to receive, updates from the court in a more systematic manner. So it's really about first doing that discovery and understanding where exactly is their pain point. And I think this is crucial because different people have different pain points. And while there are like tons of solutions, I keep saying this, there are tons of solutions out there and they may not all be for you. You need to figure out which solution is for you. So it's about first understanding during that discovery, asking the right questions and understanding what are the pain points that they are looking to resolve through a better process, which could be through just it could be a manual process, or it could even be a process through the adoption of technology. So once you do that discovery process, then you sort of identify together that, okay, we have identified X, Y issues. And it could be, for example, our corporate team really wants to spend less time that gets crossed off on billing. So they spend maybe 6 hours in drafting a contract, but they're able to build only 3, and we want to bring that time down. So what are the things we can do? So then I start interviewing people from the corporate team. I understand what are the kind of contracts they're working on, why is it taking so long, and what is it that is causing that non-billable time. So is it a formatting issue? Is it a proofreading issue? Or is it because they don't have standardized contracts and the contract, creating the first draft itself takes so much time? Do they have a template in place? So these are the questions you kind of ask. And you can't also put all solutions in at one because it's going to really be overwhelming. You really need to think about adoption as well. So you kind of figure out which is their biggest pain point, and it'll be different for different organizations. For some, it's automation, like you just fix the automation problem and you get them their first draft, and then they've already saved that much time. For some others, it's proofreading because they don't want to spend that time proofreading. Maybe they already have their templates ready or their precedents, and it's easier for them to create the first draft. And it could be for the third set, they have a firm which is extremely particular about formatting and their form and style, and they spend hours and hours formatting, and of course you can't bill 2 hours formatting a document. So it's really about understanding what is their pain point, and within that pain point, which is the bigger pain point that they want to address first, and then focusing on, is this a solution that requires a technology to be adopted, or is it a solution that can just be made more efficient through the adoption of a best practice? So you start off with that. Once you together identify the issue that you want to resolve, then you look at the possible solutions out there. Like I would say there are X, Y, Z solutions out there in the market. You can sometimes do a trial of all of the, you can't always do a trial of all of the solutions because sometimes there could be more than 10 vendors in the market and you don't really have the time to check out 10 vendors. But I will help them narrow down the vendor list, and then we will go through maybe a trial of 2 vendors or 3 vendors. And after the trial, we work on the feedback from the trial and then choose and decide which is the vendor we want to go ahead with. And I will help them in the negotiation process. And then we will work on an adoption plan. I think this is really, really crucial to figure out how do you, because adoption is not just, a lot of times lawyers think that the tool has come in and it's going to do this magic and I don't need to do anything else. Now it's going to like automate all my precedents on my own. And that never happens. I mean, like all technology solutions are human plus technology. It's not like a magic wand. So you need to figure out what is the human investment required from the law firm or even the corporate legal department, because a lot of lawyers are busy people. Nobody has the time, and nobody wants to invest the time in making that human investment of training the software, if it's an AI-based software, or even if it's you're coming up with your automation, you need to put your precedent templates in place. You need to set aside time to actually put that together. So you need to really be very clear in setting expectations on both sides. This is what the technology can deliver. This is what I as a consultant can deliver. And this is the kind of time investment we are requiring from the lawyers to deliver for this solution to be effective. So you really need to work on that plan and put it together, and also get a sense of what is the management thinking about this particular pain point and how are they viewing the investment in technology. And I use the word investment because sometimes management uses the word expense, and it represents a completely different mindset, because when you start thinking about your technology investment as an expense, everything is expensive. And there have been times where, I have gone to a law firm and I've gotten like a solution which will automate all of their precedents, or, help them reduce, at least 20% of their lawyers' time, thereby improving their productivity by that much. And the cost of that solution could be the cost of maybe 2 senior associates, but they're getting that solution for the entire firm. And still, they will find that expensive. And this is a firm that could otherwise go out and hire extra hands without thinking twice. So it's not like the cost or the salary of those senior associates are, really denting the profit and loss of the firm. But it's just that they don't have the mindset of spending that kind of money on technology because they've never done it before. So they don't have a technology budget. They don't have they may not have a technology team that is looking and continuously evaluating different options out there, which is why when you suddenly out of the blue tell them that this is how much the technology costs, they're suddenly like, whoa, this is like way too much and we can't spend it. So it's also about having that conversation, because when a firm thinks it has spent too much, it has very high expectations on the technology. Then they look at the usage, they want 100% usage, and that's not always the case. You use some documents like, some technology like Microsoft Word or Outlook every day, but you're not necessarily going to use some other solution every day. A good example would probably be your calendar invite, your calendar. You may not use that every day, but you need it when you use it. So if you suddenly need to send a calendar invite, or Teams, you may not use Teams every day because you may not have a meeting every day, and you may not be using Teams for your internal communications, but you still need Teams when you use it. So it's about also educating the management about usage and what kind of expected usage is possible for different solutions. So is this a software solution that will give you 100% usage, or is this a solution that even 50% usage is actually very good? It's about educating them on what is the expectation they can have from that solution, and what is the ROI that they can consider, because often ROIs also are just used in a quantity sense, like I have spent X, so I need to see sort of at least X% of benefit, but it sometimes doesn't work that way. If you're looking at a security solution or a threat management solution, you are securing the firm against cyber attacks. Now, how do you quantify that? You can quantify that as 10x, or you can quantify it as 5x, depending on how important protecting your firms from cyber attacks is, and also depending on how secure you feel your existing system is. So a lot of it is discussion with the management and understanding how important are these points to them. Because for some firms or some organizations, security is extremely important. For some firms, it's not as much. For some firms, something else is more important. So it's also about understanding what are their priorities and what is the weightage they assign to that priority. Because if you don't do that upfront, then in your ROI analysis, you'll always fall short, and they'll always feel that we didn't get the kind of return on investment that we envisaged for this type of a tool.
That's a very interesting point you bring forth, which is about mindset, right? And just kind of get a sense of what is required and what needs to be done. I'm trying to understand, in your experience, right, what are the kind of usual pushbacks that you get within the Indian law firm market, and what can be good arguments to sort of get out of those pushbacks?
I think the pushbacks are quite a few, and they come from different stakeholders. So if you look at, and each of them have to be addressed, they're all valid pushbacks. I'm not going to say that they're not valid. And you really have to see whether some can be addressed and sometimes it can't be addressed, and maybe that solution doesn't make sense. And you have to do that analysis and come to that assessment. So from the lawyers, you get a lot of change management pushback because they don't have the time, they want the system to work, or they don't necessarily want to put the time and investment required to make that solution work. So you need to be able to understand that, am I going to allocate a certain resource to invest the time required for this? Am I going to allocate a certain resource for feedback management? Because once you've deployed it, if people aren't using it, you need someone to go around and say, hey, what's the problem? Is the software not working? Why are you not using it? Is it because you don't understand how to use it? You've forgotten how to use it? There was no training given to you. You're a lateral journey and you don't know where to, who to ask. You need to have that feedback loop also in place. So I feel change management is an it's an entire science, and you really need to figure out how are you going to do this change management within the law firm, and deal with that pushback at different levels. You have pushback from the management. You have because they want their lawyers to be spending their time billing, and if it's in-house, they want their lawyers to be spending their time doing work, because they don't have that they don't have extra manpower to spend on investing that time in developing or putting that technology together. So you have pushback from management saying that how much time are they going to give, because I really need to see whether it's worth the time. Is that tool really going to give me back that time somehow? You have pushback from IT, because they maybe have to do some integrations at their end or some updates on their end, because sometimes you buy a tool and it can only work in XYZ environment. So then the IT needs to do ensure that their environment is possible on all of their systems. So then you have pushback on IT on that. You have pushback on from the management sometimes on the actual amount that is spent on these software tools. And you also sometimes have pushback on the technology itself, because sometimes you'll have lawyers that you'll have technology that works only on Windows environments, but lawyers will say, I want to work only on Mac. So then you have to figure out, does it work on Mac, or how much does it work on Mac, and what are the tools that will not work on Mac? So you really need to work with different stakeholders. If there's a innovation team, then find out what is it that they want from this, because sometimes the pushback that you'll get from them is that this is a great tool, but it's not on our priority right now. We really want to focus on something else. So the innovation team is identifying their priorities. The technology team is identifying their environment, and sometimes they also look at the costing and the budgeting. The management is, of course, the costing, the budgeting, as well as the return on investment analysis, and what is their vision for their organization going forward. And then the last is, like I said, the change management with the lawyers. So I would say broadly, these are the areas in which you receive pushback, and this is how you work with them to understand where exactly is that pushback coming from and what can we do to address it.
I mean, in terms of adoption, right? I know you've spoken about change management. I understand it's a whole different beast, but are there things that have worked out for you to get quick wins in that sense on the adoption front?
Again, you use the word worked out, but you are very, very wary of using words like worked out, because I think lots of things are continuous works in progress.
Yeah.
Like you do something, it works, but not fully. So you kind of tweak it, and then you do something, you help it work better. So I can definitely give you excuse me, I can definitely provide tips that have helped with adoption, but I would say it's work in progress, and it's you have to keep focusing and tweaking it depending on the changing environment of your lawyers. So definitely it starts with, some useful things are having sort of like a user champion. Actually, authored an article on this on my website, Walchet, and I've listed about 5 points. One is having a user champion. I find this super, super useful, because essentially this is your colleague who's used the software, really likes it, telling you, guys, this is amazing. Because if somebody who's you're sitting next to you and also like doing the same kind of work that you're doing, and you're struggling with something, they say, oh, why are you struggling with this? This software is here. It's really amazing. You just do tuck, 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 and then everything happens automatically. It's super cool. You're like, okay, I'm going to check it out. But if your IT staff comes and tells you, or sometimes even, you're just going to be like, okay, they don't really know what I'm talking about, because they're not actually doing the kind of work I'm doing. So I feel like having a user champion who's really going to, you could have like somebody, your user champion, sort of record a little video. It could be like an Instagram read, like I use this tool and this is what I did. It could be like pointing here or there, just to make it fun, because everybody watches reels. To say that it helped me reduce, improve my productivity, it helped reduce the amount of mistakes in my document, or it increased the formatting, or it removed all this data with, the metadata, which I didn't want to go out to the external client, whatever it is. So you have them put together a short clip, which can then be circulated to all of the lawyers, because when someone is hearing it from them, rather from their peers, it makes a much, much greater impact. And you need to also communicate this effectively. So if you have a team meeting, this is maybe the first 5 minutes of the team meeting. If you have an offsite, then you talk about this in your offsite. It has to be percolated and distributed. So one is creating the content about the tool, which helps create awareness. The second is distributing that content to everybody in your organization in a manner in which it is acceptable for they feel like watching that content and they want to know more and learn more about it. So that is one. Then the second thing is you need someone who takes responsibility within the firm. And this could be different people for different organizations. I keep saying firm, but this is equally true for corporate legal departments. You could have someone in the legal ops team. Lots of times corporate legal departments have a dedicated legal ops team, which looks at how can we improve the operations in the legal department. And they need to, their sole job has to be, and when I say sole job, I don't mean that their only role has to be innovation and legal ops, but what the work of legal ops has to be with one person for sure, because one person has to take full responsibility to saying that I will take this forward. Because like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of time investment that each entity and organization has to put into the rollout of any technical tool. You need someone to coordinate between management, between the lawyers, between the IT, and anyone else in the organization, and with the legal tech vendor, with the consultants. You need that one person who's the special point of contact, who brings everything together. And if it's not working, knows why it's not working. Because if you don't have this one person, each stakeholder is giving you a different reason of why it's not working, and you don't really know what can be fixed to make it work. So I think it's really important to have that one point of contact whose responsibility is to drive this forward. The third thing that I would say is training. It's super, super important to train, because we keep forgetting. If we're not using the tool all the time, and some tools are not meant to be used all the time. They're meant to be used maybe once a week, or sometimes even once a month. But that once a month, it's really essential to have that tool. And you need to know how to use it. So you need to have, how do you make that training accessible to your new inductees? How do you make that training accessible to fresh joinees, lateral joinees? How do you make that training accessible to existing people who have already been trained, but you need a refresher course? So you need to really make training a part of the lawyer's everyday life. And it can't be a 1-hour training session. Nobody wants to attend a 1-hour training session. Nobody has the time to attend a 1-hour training session. So you need to figure out how to make the training fun, attractive, and, incentivize the training. There are lots of fun ideas circulating out there. I will leave you to innovate on your own. The other thing is about, I think, also awareness about the tools. So you need to also, if you're telling somebody, we have XYZ new tool, it's not really going to work. You need to tell them, how is this tool actually going to help you? Is it going to, so for instance, in corporate legal departments, you have contract lifecycle management tools. And in a corporate legal department, it's very important to have an approval matrix. So a lot of organizations would say credit needs to approve this, quality needs to approve this, finance needs to approve this. So different parts of the agreement require different departments' approval. And you need to record all of that in some place, which typically the contract lifecycle management system does. So you need to say that, you can't just say a contract lifecycle management tool helps you manage your contracts. That makes very little sense to somebody. But if you tell them that, if you tell your risk team that, it's super useful because it records the approval matrix for every single contract. So, when the risk department is looking at any contract, they can see very clearly who has approved each contract, the date it was approved. And if there was a deviation from the company policy, that is also documented. So the minute you contextualize the technology and how it's useful to the team, it makes a lot more sense. And immediately risk is thinking, okay, this is useful for me because it makes my job much easier. So you need to do that for each department, for each stakeholder within that technology, and it immediately starts making sense to everybody. The last thing that I would say, and I think we briefly touched upon this earlier, is closing the feedback loop, because things will not work and you need to figure out why. It's not as seamless as, just load, and even load, I was going to say, it's not as seamless as starting your laptop and Windows loading, and actually that's not seamless. Sometimes you get a blue screen loading and sometimes things don't work. Even just starting your laptop, things don't work sometimes, and you call IT and you get it fixed. But the point is, you don't just say, oh, my laptop's not working, and just go out and buy a new laptop. You try and figure out a way to fix it. So you need to have that feedback loop where something's broken. Somebody's asking, what is broken? How is it broken? Somebody's coming and looking at your system and saying, okay, now I understand this is the problem. And then somebody's giving you feedback of, this is what you can do to fix it. It broke because of XYZ, or we don't know why it broke, but we'll speak to the technology vendor about this. And then the technology vendor comes back and says, oh, it's a bug. Thank you for pointing it out. We've provided a bug fix, and now that's been released. Or, oh, actually, it's not a bug. It's because you didn't know how to use it, but this is the actual way of using it, and give them the training for that. So it's really important to close the entire loop on the tool from the end user's perspective, back to the help desk, that is the people helping them with the tool, back to the technology vendors. So you need someone who's also doing this entire loop to understand where it is, because only once you've done the entire loop will you understand whether the technology is working for the team or not. So these are sort of my 5 quick points. I mean, there's tons of other stuff that you can do, but I think it's really important to start with the plan and work through each of these items.
So what we'll do is we'll also put a link to the article and generally your website in the description.
Sure,
so it's easy for people to access.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. I just have a few more questions. Like, I won't take too much of your time. One thing I do want to understand is, you've been running Elliot for a while now. What changes have you seen in terms of just, how people are reacting to technology and law and the legal industry?
So this is, definitely there's a lot of change. And I think this question is different for different jurisdictions. Now, particularly for India, I would say people are changing. Law firms 10 years ago that didn't look at systems are looking at systems today. Of course, lawyers in India aren't changing as rapidly as lawyers in, say, the US or the UK. But then you can definitely see that there is a change in the way they view technology in their work processes. So even corporate legal departments in India are becoming a lot more sophisticated. They're becoming a lot larger. So they do need to have management systems in place for their contracts, or even for their data. Because if you have a really large legal team, and let's say you're in a bank, or even like a legal, or even if you're in, say, like an Infosys, they also have a very large legal team. You need to have proper systems and technology in place to manage all of the processes within that, because you do a lot of work. A lot of these legal teams do a lot of work in-house as well. So if they want to do the work in-house, they need to have sophisticated systems in place. And sometimes these systems include technology, sometimes they're just a proper system in place. But you can definitely see that that shift has come in, where they are thinking about how do we make this more efficient? Because as everyone grows, and everybody knows that the legal sector in India is really growing at an extremely rapid pace, just in terms of the number of hires each company is making, each law firm is making each year. There is a very large growth rate for lawyers in the country and for the legal industry overall. And as that grows, you can see people paying a lot more attention to productivity, efficiency, and systems and processes. And a part of that is technology. So you can definitely see a change. I think India has a lot of legal tech incubators as well, a lot of law firms, and otherwise also, you have a lot of legal tech companies coming up in India. So I would say our supply side is fairly strong. Our demand side is catching up. That's the way I would put it.
This is like a completely off-track question, but Elliot and Walchet, like, why are those names there, and what's the story behind them?
Elliot was more around, we wanted to have some personification, like you have Alexa for Amazon, and you have Siri for Apple, Watson for IBM. Everything is a person's name, because you want to personify the technology. It can't just be, and I think a lot of this has to do with I want to say adoption. Maybe that's a little far-fetched, but it's about, I ask Alexa to tell me when to turn off the oven, or I ask Alexa to remind me to do X, Y, Z. And rather than saying I ask my electronic assistant to do this. So if you have a name for the technology, it's just easier to weave it into your life at a superficial level, if I may say that. So that's why sort of Elliot came in and we just said, okay, let's have a name for the legal technology platform that we want to have. And when I say platform, I mean it more as a consulting service where we offer different technology solutions. So it was more meant to be like a personification of Elliot can come in and help you with whatever legal tech requirement that you have. Or rather, with whatever legal tech need that you have, we will prescribe a requirement or make recommendations of that. And Walchet is, I mean, it's just, I would say, an anagram of law tech. So,
oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So, yeah, it's not something, there's no real science to it. It's just an anagram.
Got it. And just in all of this, right, where do you think the future of the legal tech industry in India is? Do you think, are we catching up fast enough, or what is it? Where are we at?
I mean, I'm definitely going to disclaim this by saying I'm not an expert in, I mean, I always say I'm still learning. There's so much, every day I learn something new. So I would be a little wary of making a broad statement like that. But I think if I were to position India, I would say that we're in a really good place for developing good legal tech products. Maybe not at the scale and the level of some other countries, but I think some of the legal tech products that are being built out of India are extremely good, and they're adaptive. They change and they iterate their products very quickly. They are competitive. They do have global ambitions. So I would say that I am fairly bullish about the Indian legal tech product market. I have a lot of hope that it is going to scale and it is going to grow quite rapidly. I think, of course, I mean, you can't really compare it to other ecosystems because we have a unique ecosystem in India with its own unique set of challenges, and obviously that does impact the growth of legal tech products in India. But we do have a good technology talent pool in India, and I do see now that pool being attracted towards legal tech. I think before there was, health tech and fintech, and nobody was interested in legal tech in India. But there is a definite change where now you see, lots of engineers in engineering. I have seen so many legal tech startups with no lawyer in the startup. It's just engineers from like different engineering colleges come up and say, why is legal like so backward? Like, why don't they have like these basic solutions? Like the technology is already out there, but we don't see lawyers using it. So they've already identified that this is a problem and they're already working on solving it. So I would say this is only going to grow, and that's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great thing. In fact, you did mention that you speak regularly to students trying to get into legal tech, right? And that's sort of my last question. For somebody who's trying to is either a student trying to get into legal tech, or is a professional trying to pivot, somebody like you maybe. So where do they start? What's a good starting point?
I don't know if there's real like a right path or something to prescribe, because this legal tech is sort of still uncharted territory in India and even abroad. So if you're and also there's different skill sets within legal tech, right? I mean, like I said, there are tons of legal tech companies which don't have a single lawyer. So it's not like I'm always speaking to law students. Of course, there are lots of times law students approach me and say, I don't want to practice law. I'm looking for a career outside law. Can you tell me a little bit more about legal tech? But there are a lot of other students who are not lawyers and still want to get into legal tech. And it's hard to sort of say that, or rather prescribe what is the next step to do, because it's not like a set journey. It's not like legal tech companies are coming to schools to recruit directly like the way, law firms or corporate legal departments do. So it's not as structured a process as some of the other careers within law. But I would say the first thing would be start reading up more about your subject, whatever interests you. It could be a specific niche in legal tech. Like a lot of engineers are interested in AI and the law. So start reading up more about it. Understand what are the other solutions all over the world which are dealing with this problem. How have they addressed it? What are the different use cases for it? What is being done in India? There's a ton of problems in India around the legal justice system, in fact, There's a great organization, Agami, which is looking to solve a lot of, or rather looking to create an ecosystem where we can solve problems for the justice delivery system in India. And there are lots of startups who are trying to solve that problem. There are startups trying to solve the problem around digitization of land records. So these are all very unique Indian problems. I would say figure out what is your interest, and sometimes even to figure out what you're interested in, you need to do a little bit of research. You need to read about what are the startups out there, what are the problems they're working on, or sometimes even without the startups, figure out what are the issues in the Indian legal system. I mean, this is in India. You could also pick a global problem. What are the global issues that lawyers face all over the world? Figure out what are the problems you care about. Are there startups already working on this? Are the companies already working on this? What is happening in that space? What is the technology that would be most useful? And sometimes, like AI, AI is not a new tech. Maybe it's relatively newer in law, but it's not new in other fields. So lots of times you could have AI, which has been fairly developed in a fintech industry, which can also be used in a legal sort of a scenario. So kind of figuring out what that is, reading more about it, speaking to people in the industry. I would say start putting yourself out there, because once you start reading, asking questions, speaking to people, reaching out to people, you gather more information. And then somebody will say, oh, you're interested in this. I just met someone last week and, they're doing something in this. Let me connect you. So if you just sit in your head and you just work on your laptop, you'll only get that much of research done. But if you start talking to people about it, you'll get a lot more. Like a lot of people are very afraid to share their idea, especially if they're planning to start something new. And that was me too initially. You don't want to share your idea because you think someone will steal it. And a colleague entrepreneur told me this. They said that, it's not about the idea, it's about execution. And if you look at Google, like there was already a search engine in place, or Facebook, there was already like a social networking platform in place. But so it's not about the idea or being the first, it's really about the execution. And I would say, don't be afraid to talk to people. I mean, of course, there are some things that you would have to keep confidential, but the more people you talk to, the more ideas you get, the more feedback you get. And it's not just about talking to, sometimes you need to speak to your perspective. If you have an idea about a startup, you need to speak to your prospective end users to understand what do they like, what do they not like, what are their preferences, what kind of a tool would be helpful. So I would say start getting out there in the market, talking to people, testing your ideas, figuring out how you can build it. Sometimes before you even build it with technology, you can just do a wireframe and then test it out with the users. Start doing things, because you're going to fail a lot. So the faster you start doing things, the faster you fail, the faster you can move on to something else. Like I said, every time you say what worked for you, I'm like, it's what didn't work. So the more number of times you can go through what doesn't work, the faster you can get to what works.
I mean, that's great advice. Is there are there any last thoughts you have that you want to share with us before we part?
I think I would just say that legal tech is sort of, I believe, and I hope I'm not wrong, that legal tech is sort of at the infancy of like exploding into becoming really big. Last year in 2021, we had the first 3 legal tech IPOs. I mean, technically we had iManage, which IPO'd in 1999, but since then, it was last year, there were 3 companies that went public in the US, and it's really been huge for the legal tech ecosystem, because when investors see that legal tech companies can go public and can also do well public, you make it a more viable option to continue investing in these companies. You attract more funds, and if you attract more funds, you attract more talent to that company. You get people, not just lawyers, but from different walks of life to join that company. So I feel like it's a cycle that has already started, and we're only going to see it grow. So I'm really, really excited to see where legal tech is going to take us.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Priyadarshini, for taking out the time today. This was absolutely brilliant. We'll link everything in the description below. And thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to us at Prolawgue.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shreya. Thanks, Prolawgue. I think I've watched some of the interviews and they're really, really interesting. So I'm very excited to see what Prolawgue also has to do and
thank you so much
in the coming months.
Thanks.
Bye.